we have a very special guest, friend of the show, Ryan Walsh. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for joining us as always. And second, we have our first live mock draft of the year. It's going to be a lot of fun. We each have 9 teams. Some of us have teams with multiple first round picks, so it's going to get pretty fun throughout this process. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. And with that being said, let me take a look here. I believe it is Ryan is on the clock with the
Yep.
Las Vegas Raiders.
So can I be like the Vikings and take up the whole 10 minutes for this? We'll just talk and we'll say, "Oh, who am I going to pick here? I wonder." Unfortunately, I didn't get the Vikings. Otherwise, I would have tried to simulate that here. But yeah, as I believe both you guys know, I am an IU alum, and although I'll probably try to put some surprises in here. This is not where I could put one. If you let me trade back, maybe I'd try to get creative, but no, we got to go Mendoza here. I was at the college football playoff championship game, and he's the real deal, and he's from my alma mater, so I think I would be kicked out of the Kelly School business there if I didn't pick him. So, but no, it's going to be interesting. I think he's going to turn that team around sooner rather than later, but we'll have to see. They need a lot of pieces, which is why a trade down or something like that would be entertaining. But no, it's Mendoza there for the first pick.
Yeah, and I'm definitely right there with you. Mendoza does feel like the obvious pick, but if honestly, if I were the Raiders GM and I got offered some, fat package, I might take it because there is a very, very good quarterback class coming in next year, and you're probably not going to be, that good. So, but I definitely understand going with the pick as we sit here. With that being said, I am on the clock with the New York Jets, and I feel like this is where the draft really starts. Okay. And I know we just talked about Mendoza and everything. That's kind of a foregone conclusion. However, there's a lot of players in play here for the Jets at 2. For me personally, I'm a big fan of Ruben Bain. I do think he is my, number one edge in this class. However, I'm going to go with Arvell Reese here. And I'll tell you exactly why. Aaron Glenn is the defensive coordinator, or I'm sorry, the head coach and defensive coordinator in, in a lot of ways over there in New York. And I think Arvell Reese has a very, very high ceiling as an edge and as a linebacker. And I think Aaron Glenn would use him perfectly. And so I go ahead with Arvell Reese there over, the other edges like Ruben Bain and David Bailey as well.
Yeah, a movable Micah Parsons style piece seems like a good thing for Aaron Glenn for sure.
Definitely agreed there. And then it looks like I'm right back on the clock with the Cardinals here. And this honestly is kind of a hard pick for me because they do have quite a bit of needs. I could see Jeremiah Love, although I'm not going to go there with this one because, this is what we would do more than necessarily what we think is going to happen. And I just don't think Arizona is at the spot to draft a running back. They'll be just like the Giants with Saquon and waste his prime, and then he'll go somewhere else in free agency when they're actually ready to win. With that being said, Ruben Bain is very intriguing. Sonny Styles is very intriguing. David Bailey's intriguing. Maui Goa is intriguing. But I think I'm just going to go with my edge number 1, and that's Ruben Bain. Obviously, they need a lot of edge help. They do need some offensive line help as well, specifically at tackle. Well, guard too, I could say. But I think Ruben Bain's just too good right now to pass on, and he is probably a difference maker for Arizona.
I've been following your social media, Jason. I knew he would be off the board early. I don't know where we were all drafting, but I didn't even have him on any of my draft boards because other than one, I didn't think I was going to get him.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my draft crushes for sure.
Oh, I can see why. He is. I mean, Reese is kind of a hybrid. So as far as pure end, I think he's the best one too.
Yeah, and I think I'm a little lower on David Bailey than most as well. So
I am too, actually. Yeah.
With that said, James, you are on the clock with the Titans.
Yeah, with the Titans, obviously they didn't have the season, not just in terms of the wins and losses, but just even failing the eye test for the most part. Cam Ward looked nice, but you can only do so much with a young quarterback when he's got to run for his life on every play. So I am going to take Maui Yoga here from Miami and try to shore up that offensive line for him.
Okay, I would say that is a little bit of a surprise, but I do understand the thought process.
It's not conventional.
Another thing, yeah, and another thing with Maui Goa, like he can also play guard, so I mean, he gives you some positional versatility there at number 4. And then Ryan, you are back up with the Giants.
Yeah, we've got somebody slipping here. I'm curious where he's going to go. It's not going to be here because I mean I don't know how long Scadaboo is actually going to last for the Giants. I'm worried he's going to last like 2 years for them with his playing style, and they'll need a complimentary runner to him. But I don't think it's the all 3 down back that Love is, even though he's in good shape there. So yeah, I'd be between a couple of players here. I'm going to go a guy that a lot of people think is kind of one of the more in the running for number 1 player in the draft, and I'm going to go Caleb Downs and have him lock up the safety position there. Obviously, they got Harbaugh. He's used to having a stud safety like Kyle Hamilton. I assume he's going to lean defense. That team has a lot of needs, so that's a lot of these teams at the top. Obviously, that's pretty common. But I feel like that could swing a bunch of different ways. But I'm going Downs there.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that personally. I do get the pick, but it's not like kind of like the Maui Goa situation. I understand the pick, just not the conventional pick we see there. With that being said, James, you are on the clock with the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, well, I got conventional for you with this one. Um, I'm not going to drag it out. Cornell Tate, wide receiver from Ohio State. You got to give that offense a true number 1 receiver to try to build around, and they have another first-round pick later in this draft that they can add to more of a need base or a bigger
Yeah, and
need
I
base, I should
definitely
say.
I think you hit it on the head there with the non-convent or a very conventional pick,
Yeah.
I should say, because that is, not only is he a number 1 need at wide receiver, he's also an in-state player coming from Ohio State. So kind of cool situation there. And there is somebody sitting on the board right now that I'm very, very, there's 2 guys really that I'm very
Yeah,
surprised
this
about.
is working out well
Um,
here. Yeah.
with that said, Washington, okay, we have a need at running back. Okay, don't get me wrong, right? I am aware of that. However, we also have a need at edge, right? And the question is, which one do I think is going to be more impactful for the Commanders, not just next year, but over let's say the next decade? Call me crazy. I'm going Jeremiah Love here. Okay, and here's why. Jaden Daniels obviously, has some durability concerns there. Obviously, they don't really have a true number 1 running back. Signing Rashad White in free agency, but they also signed Odafa Owe, Kaylavon Chason, Charles Omenihu in free agency as well at the edge position. And like I mentioned before, I'm a little lower on David Bailey than most, I think. So I go for the offensive weapon here to kind of help out that offense where you really don't have a true wide receiver 2 as is.
Yeah, I think that's a slam dunk pick. The fact that he slipped worked out very well for the Commanders here.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, it's kind of surprising for me that we didn't see this pick a little bit more when he was making it past them. But this does feel like, or it seemed like this was the Downs pick, which, you took with the Giants. So that kind of changed it up a little bit there, which made it a little bit of fun. With that said, James, you are on the clock with the Saints, and I think I just stole the guy you might have picked.
Yeah, I was torn between him and Bailey, actually, so
Hmm.
you kind of made my case for me here. His slide on tier with Cam Jordan going to free agency and whatnot. They need a starting edge, and just so happens the one that's considered the most premium in this draft by most, although I personally prefer Bain as well. We'll go here for the Saints at 8.
Yeah, and I'd say that's a slam dunk pick as well. You know, a guy most people say is going to go as early as 2. Most people probably think he will not make it past 4, but here he does, and he makes it all the way to 8 with the Saints, and that is a huge pickup for them because, you know, like you said, it's kind of like a franchise cornerstone at the number 8 overall pick. So I'm sure they are happy with that. And then Ryan, you are back up with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad Bailey went off the board because I don't know when I would have picked him. I'm with you guys. I'm not as high on him as maybe some others are. And then obviously he'd be in the mix here with the Chiefs because they need end help. I think I'm going to kind of go. I went a little bit through a little bit of a curve with the Giants pick. I think I'm going to go more what I would assume is kind of Occam's razor here, lowest information to get to a conclusion. And I'm going Mansour Delane at cornerback. They need a corner. They have a sneaky amount of needs for how good they actually are. I mean, they need a receiver. They need a corner. They need some, probably could use some offensive line reinforcement. They need an edge. But after losing some corners here, I feel like in the past couple of years, I feel like they need to kind of refresh and get the top corner on the board.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you there after trading away. Oh my gosh, how am I blanking on his name?
Trent McDuffie.
Yeah, McDuffie. There we go. After trading Trent McDuffie to the Rams, I think corner is their biggest need, like you said, and getting the number 1 here at pick 9 is pretty good value. With that said, we have Ryan. You're back on the clock with the Bengals.
Well, I told James I wouldn't do this, and I didn't do it intentionally, but because we have all these teams that we have to manage, and I have to keep them separate and say, okay, I'm not going to take one player to leave another player on the board. But this was a guy that was ranked pretty highly for me for Cincinnati. There's again a lot of directions you can go here. You go corner. I'm gonna lean towards a position that I think is a bit undervalued right now in the NFL, and I'm going to go Sonny Styles at linebacker for the Bengals. I think he can make a big impact for them, and since they do have a decent amount of needs, I'm going kind of with one of the better players left.
Yeah, and it's funny. That was kind of like one of our consensus picks the first couple mock drafts we did because I just do not see a world in which Sonny makes it past the Bengals. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people talking about, you know, he might go as high as 5 to the Giants. So I think the Bengals would, you know, be running to the podium if he was still available, considering linebacker is probably their biggest need as well.
He was in consideration for me with the Giants pick at 5. So that was like, it was between that. I know Love was on the board too, but it was really more Styles and Downs for me at that point.
Yeah, which, you know, makes a ton of sense in my opinion. With that said, I am up with the Dolphins here. Man, the Dolphins are honestly one of the worst rosters in the NFL. I think we can all kind of agree on that. They just have so many needs. It's hard to really, you know, pick one. So I think I'm gonna go with just kind of best player available situation here. And I know, you know, as I scroll down, it doesn't seem like I'm going the best player. But you know, I think corner is an obvious huge need for them, and I really like Jermod McCoy. Obviously, he's coming off of that, you know, injury, which we haven't seen him play football in quite a while. But the testing, you know, the tape that he put out when he was healthy, I think if he was healthy last year, he's probably a top 10, top 5 pick even, based on the film that he put out the year prior. So Dolphins go corner here with Jermod McCoy, and on the clock with the Cowboys, we have James. You are up.
The board didn't fall exactly how I thought it was going to, so this is a more interesting pick for me. With what's available, I will probably take. Of course, as I'm scrolling through the guys I have left on my side mock here, so that way I can keep up to date. It's freezing up on me. Come on. Come on. All right. A guy I know who's at least going to be up there in consideration, and I know who's still on the board, I'll just go with him. Spencer Fano, tackle slash guard from Utah. They need to shore up their O-line, and his versatility, I think, puts him ahead of, at least for the Cowboys, over Monroe Freeling.
Yeah, I was talking with Ryan Roberts of A to Z Sports, who's one of the ones that does the mock. He does the main mock for them on my show on Thursday. And he had him slipping, I think, even past the Lions. I think he had Freeling over him for the Lions. And that just seemed like a long way for him to fall. I've seen him lower in these mock drafts, but he's still valued pretty high. So I'm curious to see where he actually lands. I don't know why he's landing lower, if that's like an aggregation thing that now.
Yeah, I like him a
down.
lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why he's moving down, because everybody still seems to have him rated pretty high here.
I think personally with Fano, I think it's just because people aren't sure if he's going to be a tackle in the NFL. Because there have been a lot of conversations about kicking him inside, and I know he worked out as a center at the combine in a few drills, not like he was doing, as a center, but that could be why. And another thing with this Cowboys pick is I am kind of surprised you went offensive line here, only because the times that I've done a few, first round mocks, I always think to myself, okay, the Cowboys, they need edge, they need offensive tackle. Which one do I think, they might be able to get with that second first round pick? So I do like the Fano pick, though, for sure. They need to shore up that right tackle spot. And obviously, like I said, he can also kick inside with some versatility. So with that
the
said,
versatility is what pushed it over the top for me, because I think they need a guard and a tackle.
Yeah, which is a totally understandable. And with that being said, I am on the clock with the Rams. And honestly, this is probably the hardest pick for me so far, because both of the corners are gone that I would have liked here. And obviously, they don't have a huge need at corner because they traded for McDuffie, and then they signed a few guys in free agency. So I think, okay, and call me crazy here, but I think the Rams are going to go tackle in the first round. And I say that because they have two tackles who, they're not, how do I say this? They're not top guys, and they're both, a little bit older, not necessarily on retirement age yet. But that's why I think I'm going to go with, it's hard. I like Monroe Freeling, don't get me wrong. But I do think his testing numbers are what made him fly up a lot of people's draft boards. And I'm going to go with the steady number one tackle for a lot of people, Caleb Lomu here, because he is played left tackle in college and things like that. So he can kind of play either side for them. And like I said, the Rams just kind of are in a tough spot here with this pick.
The tackle rankings are interesting to me, because you could really see a world in which a lot of those guys that you had on the screen there, Jace, could kind of move up and down depending on need, depending on how they value different traits and different things, because they all have different packages at this point as far as what they provide. So yeah, that'll be a real preference thing, I think, because there's going to be a run on them. All those guys are going to go. I assume they're going to go in our first round here, all the guys that you had on the screen. But yeah, they all have kind of a lot of varying strengths and weaknesses for a position that isn't really known for that usually.
Yeah, for sure. And I
here?
Sorry. Yeah, you're good. I also think tackle is in this draft specifically. After you get out of the first round, it's going to be hard to find somebody who can start right away.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a real tier situation.
Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was just saying there's a real tier situation there, like you were saying. Yeah, so no, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. With that said, James, you are up with the Ravens, and I have a feeling I know what you're going to do here.
Don't know if you could hear me sigh. Now, this goes exactly to what Ryan and I were talking about pre-show, about you can't pass on a guy just because you want the Lions to get him. And I'm like, well, they have multiple needs and blah, blah, blah. Let's just get it over with. Vega Ione, guard from Penn State.
It's so funny. You say that so sad, but, and I know why, but
he's one of my favorite players in the whole draft. I know at least in terms of the Lions potentially taking him, we have bigger needs than guard. I get it. I just think he is such a good player that you just couldn't
Mhm.
pass on him if he was there at 17. But since we are doing what we would do, I would just take him and let that offense have a lot more protection for Jackson and Derrick Henry and whatnot.
Yeah, you sounded like Eeyore there, James. You were
Oh,
very
bother.
forlorn. Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree there, because I think guard is their biggest need on offense by far, probably. They didn't have great guard play last year, and they let their starting right guard walk in free agency. So they
They
did
lost
sign John
Linderbaum too.
Simpson. Yeah, so they need some
Oh.
extra help on the interior. With that being said, Ryan, you are up with the Bucks.
Yeah, I might have to do the same thing that James just did because I'm between two players and I've got to take my Lions lens out of it because there's one player that the Lions would not take,
Mm.
I don't believe, and there's one that they would that would definitely be on their draft board. You guys may know who I'm talking about with both of those. Jace is shaking his head, so I'm between the two. Since Tampa's a defense oriented team, I would lean towards the defensive player, which for me is Keldrick Falk.
Yep.
The other one that was in consideration was Sadiq there because they could use an upgrade at tight end, but I just don't know. Now I'm kind of going between what I would do versus what the Bucks would do, but I am high on Falk. I think he's a good value there. And as far as impact player in the first round, not that Sadiq wouldn't be a good player, but they've still got some weapons, and Falk seems like a good fit in their defense there.
Yeah, and
Putting
I
him next to
totally agree with this because we literally just did a mock a couple weeks ago, and that Keldrick Falk to the Bucks at 15. I just don't see him making it past there, because I think James, I know where you were going with what your comment there. Putting him next to Vita Vea in that
Yep.
defensive line would be nasty.
That's
Good luck
exactly
running
what I
on
was
them.
gonna say. Exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah, Cansey, Vea, and Falk. I mean, that's classic Bucks right there. So to me, that's got to be the pick.
Oh yeah, and Keldrick Falk is one of my favorite players in this entire draft, honestly. For the Lions specifically, I just think he would fit exactly what we need, but he's probably not going to make it there, unfortunately, which we saw
Yeah, what's
here.
his name over there too? Kalijah Cansey.
Yeah, yep. With
Yeah,
that
that
being
would be a mean D
said,
line.
yeah, good luck running on them and even passing on them once Falk figures out a couple rush moves. With that said, I am up with the Jets. And let's see back. I went Arvell Reese with the first pick. And I feel like it's obvious with the Jets what both of their picks are going to be, right? I feel like we can kind of all agree there. I personally am not in love with Makai Lemon as much as others. However, Jordan Tyson's injury history really, really scares me. So I am going to go Makai Lemon here. And there's a few reasons why. Number one, Jordan Tyson, obviously probably the best wide receiver and talent in the draft, but he has a lot of injury issues. I also believe that him and Garrett Wilson are similar style players. So you get Lemon because he's going to be healthy, hopefully. And then also because I think he kind of works in the slot and Garrett's more outside. And then you give whoever your quarterback in 2027 is two really good weapons there.
Yeah, I'm with you on the receiver thing as a whole. I can see your hesitation there, but yeah, it is a huge need and maybe not like a home run fit as far as the receiver goes where you really like that player. But yeah, they need a lot. I mean, the Jets, unfortunately, because I would like a softer landing spot for Aaron Glenn, but they need a lot. But yeah, I feel like that's a good pick. By the way, I'm going off the Beast's 100 prospects and then crossing them off as we pick them, so I know who's left. We have the top 15 gone, and then there's only one player out of the top 15. You took Lomu, Jace, and he's 25. But otherwise, we're holding pretty true to the format here.
And I'm curious, is Freeling higher than Lomu on that list?
He is. He's 17.
Okay. And see, like I said before, I'm a fan of Freeling, don't get me wrong, but like before the combine, the guy was a late first rounder maybe, and now we're talking about him at 6 to the Browns. I just think that's a little bit of recency bias, specifically in the media. Because if you watched his film and you didn't see a top 5 player, why would the combine change your thought process on that? I
I did
guess.
see a handful that had him going to Chicago at 25 prior
hmm
to combine. But
Yeah,
yeah, not he
25 to
wasn't,
28 was about
6.
where I saw him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know about that one. We'll see what the NFL actually thinks. Speaking of Monroe Freeling, though, I am on the clock with the Lions, and I promise I didn't do this on purpose. It's just how
Do it,
it
Jace.
happened. Um,
Do it.
Monroe Freeling is a Detroit Lion.
Yes.
I'm a fan of Caden Proctor, but not as much as I like Freeling. Proctor just I think scares me a little bit in a lot of ways. However, excuse me, I think the Lions love Proctor, which I've talked about for the last like 3 weeks. I feel like on the show. But Daniel Jeremiah just said the same thing, which kind of solidifies it a little bit more. Makes sense, you know. He's 20 years old. He's like 6'6", 330 pounds, and you know he's a mauler. He was supposed to be a top 5 pick coming into the draft. But with that said, I am going to go with what I think might be a safer pick in Monroe Freeling. Plays right tackle, moves Panay over to left like Dan Campbell wants. And I think it's a home run pick. You know, like we just said, a lot of people are talking about him at 6. So I really like the fit and the player.
Yeah, in
Are
terms of like realistic um people who can be on the board, he might be my favorite. Unless, like I said, Vega
Mhm.
falls, but don't see that happening. But yeah, I would love Freeling on this line.
All right. With that said, the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock, and that will be you, James.
Yeah, this is going to be another one, kind of like the Tate at 6, that is probably the most predictable pick in the entire draft. I'm probably going to butcher his last name, but I would take Dylan Thieneman, safety from Oregon. With Harrison Smith retiring, there is a massive hole in that secondary, and I feel like he can fill in quite well.
Yeah, and I like Dylan specifically as a free safety in the NFL, which is exactly what the Vikings need. So, like you said, obvious pick there, in my opinion, at least. You know, and we just talked about testing numbers and how that moves people up the board, but I think at safety, it's a little bit more understood why he moved because he was a guy that was looked at like he's not a great athlete, and then he kind of wowed at the combine. So, I think he's definitely deserving of the 18th pick.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me the way he's moved and just kind of the general background with him. It seems like he's kind of the safety version of Jack Campbell in this cycle, as
Mm,
far as like a guy that was very traits or very instincts heavy, looked like he played pretty well in the field, but wasn't really sure about the athleticism. Then kind of off the charts at the combine. That's kind of what he did at safety. And if people were already high on his leadership ability and a lot of the other stuff, then once he did test high on the traits part, it's like, oh, okay, we get both then with this player.
yeah. Exactly. And you know, like I said, I just think he fits perfectly in that scheme too. With that said, Ryan, you are up with the Panthers.
Yeah, so I'm one to lean into the trenches in general as far as the Lions do that. I do typically like doing that. With I think it's a good team building strategy, getting offensive line, getting good defenders on there. They have a needed offensive line. The other big need they have is for a weapon on offense. And so I think with Sadiq sitting there, I think it's time to go Sadiq at tight end. I think they need some help in protection, but maybe he's able to kind of supplement both and give a weapon there. They need receiver, they need offensive line. I'll go in between and get Sadiq.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is another pick that we've done quite a bit on this show already throughout this draft process. And, you know, you hit it on the head. I think they obviously need trench help, but I think Sadiq is probably the best player on the board. You could argue maybe Tyson is a better player, but I think Sadiq fills a need that they have had for years and years. Since Bryce has been there, they have needed a receiver at tight end. So totally understand that. And with that said, I am up with, I'm sorry, I lied.
I'm up.
Um,
Dallas.
you're up, James.
Yeah, with
Yes,
Dallas'
sir.
second pick, after going O-line and taking Fano with the first, I'm going to go D-line here and take Akeem Mesidor from Miami. I think he's the next best pass
Okay.
rusher. No?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay. I'm going to take yeah, Mesidor from Miami. I think he's the next best pass rusher up here. Maybe TJ Parker, but I'm going to go
Mhm.
Mesidor with this pick. And obviously they traded away Micah Parsons, so they're going to have to replace that hole.
Yeah, and honestly, like I really like this pick for the fit specifically. Like obviously he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie and everything like that, but the Cowboys are kind of win now anyway. I mean, look at, their quarterbacks in his, almost mid 30s. A lot of their players are getting up there in age. And honestly, Messidor, like I know I've talked about him in a not so positive way on the show necessarily. I haven't said too many negative things about him, but I just didn't love him after like taking the deep dive into his film and like really researching him. I like him a lot more than I did. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Akeem Mesidor started off as a defensive tackle. He weighed 285 pounds as a freshman, and then he gained even more weight to move into to play nose tackle his second season. So then he went to Miami and kind of lost a little bit of weight every year, and he's down to like 260, 265. But that kind of, makes me think differently about him as a player because, great athlete, good pass rusher. And I think the fact that he has moved up and down in weight means he could put on a little bit more weight in the NFL and, stop the run a little better. So I really, really like that pick. And I really like it because it's not conventional either. So with that said, I am up with the Steelers. Hmm. I feel like this one shouldn't be that difficult, really. But at the same time, there are a few places I could go. I could go with Ty Simpson here. I could go with Jordan Tyson, um, which they just traded for Michael Pittman, so I'm not so sure they go that route anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at their depth chart. I just want to see what their offensive line uh, is looking like because I know they brought back
Yeah, they've spent a lot of
Jones.
resources on the offensive line, but it's still kind of weirdly viewed as a weakness. But they've really
Hmm.
spent a lot of picks and resources on it. So yeah, that is a strange one there.
And they're just such in a weird spot because they're not necessarily win now. They're not necessarily rebuilding. They kind of need a lot of things. Um, oh man, I'm really thinking of Ty Simpson right here. I personally, I
Interesting.
have not done a deep dive into his film, but from what I've seen, watching Alabama play this year, I don't love him as a first round pick. And I'm gonna considering, Aaron Rodgers is most likely coming back. This is a tough selection here because, like you mentioned, Ryan, they've put a lot of resources into the offensive line, but it really hasn't panned out. They need a left tackle, really, but do I take Proctor here? I just don't think. I don't know.
So
I
take
don't
your
know if
time
he.
because I think the next pick's gonna, in some people's opinion, ruin our draft.
Hmm.
I'd be insulted if I had that team, James. Apparently, you have them here.
If I was a fan of this team, I would like it, but I don't think it's gonna be a popular pick.
Interesting.
Or
Okay.
yeah,
You know what?
unless Chase takes
Man.
him now. I mean,
Damn.
This is a tough one. I can see why he's struggling with this one because I know that there's not a first round grade according to a lot of people on a second quarterback, but they do need a quarterback. They had the situation with Pickett where they kind of took him a little bit early. I don't know that it's the same at all with Simpson because he is younger. He's got a lot of potential. And yeah, if you're reinforcing the offensive line, who are you even reinforcing it for? So then you've got that argument. Then again, they're a defensive team, and they and they have some holes there. So I see why you're struggling.
personally, I would lean in between Tyson or Proctor, but that's just me.
Well, and
I'm not. Yeah, I can't go receiver. I don't think after they just added Pittman.
the Pittman
and they
thing
have
changes
Metcalf.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they hadn't taken Pittman, I think receiver was a lot more viable.
And honestly, if Tyson didn't have injury issues, I think I would still take him just because he's that good. But with the question marks, I just don't think I can do it. Man, I'm honestly, and call me crazy, I'm kind of thinking about uh Caden McDonald here, the defensive tackle from Ohio State. I just don't think that they would
I
go
like him
D
as a
tackle
player.
this early. Really, really good player. I think he fits the Steelers really well as well, but I just don't think they have that big of a need at like it nose slash interior right now. Blake Miller could make some sense here, but I'm gonna go Proctor. I think after thinking about it, he plays left tackle. They desperately need a left tackle. Broderick Jones just has not been great. Going off the fact that Aaron Rodgers is probably coming back, you're gonna need some more help to create that pocket. So I go with Proctor, even though I don't feel great about it. If I was the Steelers, I'd probably try to trade down there either way, but got to have a partner for that. So I just go with Proctor. Seems like it's not that safe, but it's probably the safe pick right now.
Yeah, like I don't think anyone could blame you because once again, O-line is, I was gonna say nice to have, but in my opinion, mandatory, and they
Hmm.
have a need. So I mean, I do think he's the highest rated tackle remaining. So I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and with that said, James, you are up with the Chargers.
Chargers. Well, if I know anything about Jim Harbaugh, and I do, he loves to run the ball. They had both of their blue chip tackles in Joe Alt and oh, I
Slater.
was okay. I was about to say Slater. I'm like that doesn't sound right. It doesn't roll off my tongue, but I was right. Slater. Both get hurt last year. Obviously, they're coming back, but they need a lot of help on the interior of that line. And so with this pick, I'm going to go Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard from Oregon. I think he is a little bit underrated in falling just because he's a guard, but he is a damn good lineman. And between him and the returning tackles, that offense is going to hum much, much better. Not to mention Josh McDaniels going over there to be their OC.
I do have to say I am somewhat surprised you passed on Tyson here. I do understand, Pregnon. I love him as a player. But man, Tyson sitting right there. If I'm the Chargers, that's so enticing.
It's absolutely enticing, but once again, with this being like a how we would build the team, and especially kind of like just knowing Harbaugh, he loves his trenches, and his first pick was Joe Alt. And with Tyson, you obviously get a better pass game, but I think with Pregnon, you get both the passing and the running.
Yeah, and there's probably a decent likelihood they can get a pretty good receiver in the second round. So I definitely understand it from that standpoint. With that said, the Ryan, you are on the clock with the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, I had a different plan with this. Honestly, if because you were between Simpson and Proctor, Jace, and I figured if it was going to be a surprising pick, then James was not going to take Proctor. So I had Proctor pegged here because that kind of a similar situation to what you were talking about with the older tackles when you're talking about the Rams. Older tackles, offensive line's been a strength for Philadelphia. I thought, okay, a guy that you can kind of groom behind, behind Johnson there, and then insert him. But yeah, I mean, we've been talking about him. I know that this is a little bit of a perspective pick because we don't know what's going to happen with this situation, but I'm assuming there's a divorce coming with AJ Brown, and so I think that means I've got the 14th overall player slipping to me there. There's some receivers I do like, but I feel like Tyson, considering the fact that they usually go with a lot of weapons, and they don't have a ton of holes on the Eagles, I'm going to go with Tyson here.
Yeah, and I totally get that, especially considering AJ Brown is likely to be traded at this point, I think. I do think though a lot of people assumed it would be 2026 picks involved in that deal, and I think they're going to trade him post June 1 simply because money. They can't really afford to trade him before that. But like you said, if that is the plan, Jordan Tyson is a great pick here for, talent and fit. With that, James, yeah,
Yep, I got
James, you are up
Cleveland
with the
second
Browns.
pick. which I find interesting just because if you did not take Tyson, I'm like, do I double up on receiver here after taking Tate at 6? Just to give the Browns that many weapons. But um, I'm a man of consistency. The Browns had the vast majority of their O-line hit free agency this year. So after getting a weapon early on, they're going to go O-line and take Blake Miller with this pick here.
Yeah, great pick there. Definitely feels like a run to the podium kind of situation
Yeah.
for the Browns because there's really not many other places they could or would go at this point in the draft. So kind of
Miller
a
to me seems like a guy that's undervalued too. And maybe it's what I value out of these tackles. I was waiting for him to get picked in order to say this, but we're talking about Proctor, we're talking about Freeling. Miller seems to be a little bit more of a complete package. He's got the experience, he's got the durability. I realize he's maybe not as athletic or doesn't have the size of a Proctor, but yeah, when you compare him to somebody like Freeling, where he had the one season and kind of shot up the board because of the combine. Miller seems to be a guy that he maybe leaped over. That it's like, I don't know if he's there, especially your pick. That's what was interesting about the Lions. You know, if Freeling and Miller are on the board, I'd be real curious which one they'd lean to, because if you're telling me there's a guy in the draft at a position that they need that only missed one practice in his whole career, and it was because he was getting surgery on his broken hand, and then he came back. It just was
Came
at the
back the next
time.
day, yeah.
Yeah, like just that the timing didn't work out physically to go to practice. That's the only practice he missed. That seems like a Lions player to me. But that's been consistent with how everybody's evaluated him, though, that he's been lower than Freeling. I'm just curious what'll happen kind of leading up to the draft and then draft day.
Yeah, and that's a good point, considering the point we made earlier where it's kind of weird how Freeling just shot up the draft board. They were drafted very, very similar picks. Like I want to say it was around, 23 to 28, both of them went. So I definitely, understand your take there. And he might be more of a Lions player considering, the fact that he missed one practice and it was to have surgery. That sounds like a Dan Campbell guy.
Yeah, I have him pretty similarly ranked to Freeling. I think it just matters on where you want to play him because Miller played right tackle at Clemson and Freeling played left. So if you don't want to, or I should say, if you do want to move Sewell, and I'm not saying Freeling can't move to right tackle, but if you want people to play their natural positions, you could leave Sewell at right tackle and draft Freeling to be your left, or move him and then draft Miller, and you don't have to worry about a rookie trying to play out of position.
Right. With that, I am on the clock with the Bears, and honestly,
Hunter.
I feel I think long snapper, James. I think
Yeah.
that's a little more realistic. With that being said, I am just they have a lot of needs, okay, especially on defense. And I think defensive interior D line is a big need for them. Even before considering the fact that Javon Dexter is probably going to leave. But at the same time, I feel like this interior D line class is pretty deep. Um, but man, they need this is tough. They need interior D line, they need corner. They need you could say linebacker, but obviously we're not going to draft that here. Um, it's really between McDonald and Banks for me here, and for two totally different reasons. Caden McDonald is, the run stuffer, kind of one technique, and then Caleb Banks is kind of like your twitchy big guy, but he's got some injury problems. I do like Peter Woods. Um, you know what? In hindsight, maybe the pick is Peter Woods here. I'm a big fan of Peter Woods, but hmm,
I'm like, I
let's
don't like the
see.
idea of the
I
Bears
think I
taking
think
any of them.
I like your
true
long
that.
snapper idea.
Yeah.
Did we scrap that? Yeah.
Well, let's see. I don't even think they have long snapper, unfortunately, on this draft board. So
I actually did hear. So they're working on the specialist part of it. I talked to the owner of Stick to the Model, and they're not really doing the specialist part yet, but they're gonna get that in there, because I talked to him about it because of Shane potentially talking to him about it on the show and
mhm.
everything. But they're working on that that piece of it.
Which, would probably be a big help, especially when you're doing the be a GM sim, because I have noticed that's not on free agency either. However, oh man, I think I'm gonna go Peter Woods here. Well,
I almost clicked it, man.
I might go with a different Clemson defensive lineman, a guy that
Parker?
I've been really high on. Yeah, I'm a big fan of TJ Parker. And the Bears, they do kind of need edge help. Deo Odeyingbo was a bit of a letdown for a free agent last year. Montez Sweat is getting a little bit older. You know what?
I
I'm
know
gonna
you
go
like
TJ
Parker, but
Parker.
would you take Parker over Howell for the Bears?
I don't like Howell. I'm not
Okay.
a fan. And I don't mean that as in like I think he sucks. I just think like he's going to be very, very limited at the NFL level as a pure pass rusher. And even then, his arms are super short. So it's like, I don't know how much success he's going to have at the next level as a pass rusher. So I would say maybe more of like a late second on Howell,
Oh,
early
wow. Okay.
third. But yeah, I think a lot of people are all over the place with both of those DNs, TJ Parker and Cassius Howell, because I've seen people rank Howell as high as 4, and I've seen people rank TJ Parker as high as 3, and both of them as low as like 9 or 10. But for the Bears, I think TJ Parker is a better fit because he stops the run a lot better. You have Montez Sweat to be like your pure rusher finesse guy, and then TJ Parker on the other side to kind of shore up your run defense. And then let's see here. James, you are up with the
Oh,
Bills.
I will take Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana, wide receiver. I think Josh Allen needs a true number one. Obviously, they are not dealing with Stephon Diggs anymore, so
They
I
traded for
will.
DJ Moore.
Oh, I
I don't
forgot
know if you
about that.
consider
I'm
him a
not gonna
number
lie,
one.
I forgot about that.
I mean, it's still a good pick with Cooper either way, but I don't know if that would change
Yeah,
your
I
thought
will take a
process.
quick once over because I did forget about DJ Moore.
I I was tempted to take Cooper when I took Tyson, just because. But I had to get rid of my IU bias there. But I do think Cooper's going to be a good player.
Yeah. I'm a big
I'm
fan of Cooper. I feel like he's
gonna
underrated
stick with
personally.
it. I
Okay.
I, I think yeah, I'll stick with that because they're gonna need
Whoop.
a young guy to fill in as well. I know DJ Moore's not that old, but um I feel like when DJ Moore will then be ready to move on off his contract, that's approximately when you have to extend Cooper. So I feel like that would fill in kind of like a back to back.
Yeah, and I totally get it. Like I said before, I'm a really big fan of Cooper. I do think he is a little bit underrated, like Ryan said. He's really like I don't see Cooper and think a wide receiver one. I see Cooper and think a very high end wide receiver two, and a lot of it is due to his like rack ability, his yak ability. Like, do I think Cooper right now is an amazing separator and a high point catch guy? Not necessarily. I think he can do those things and he could get better. But the thing that really intrigues me about him is his after the catch. Because I don't know if you guys have watched too much. I'm assuming Ryan has watched a lot of Indiana football, considering he's a fan. But he just has like rubber bands for tendons apparently, because the way that his body moves is just insane. Um, with that being said, though, the 49ers are on the clock, and that's you, Ryan.
Yeah, this might be my toughest one so far. I mean, it gets tougher as you go on. To, yeah, we've. So I kind of showed my hand a little bit that I maybe value safety more than some. I do think it's trending in the league where a good safety pairing or a strong safety that can kind of move around a little bit is becoming more valuable. The 49ers obviously have had an emphasis on defense for a long time. Their secondary is kind of on the weaker side compared to where it's been in recent years. So I'm between a couple. I'm trying to get rid of my IU bias because there's also a defensive backfielder from from IU that's a little bit later, but he's in the mix in my head because I think he's a little bit underrated. But
Pons?
yeah, I think Pons
Yeah.
is a good player. He's not going to be for everybody, but people that can be okay with the height thing, like the Lions. I know that they're not in the market for a corner at that point in the draft, but he'd be a perfect one for a team that says, okay, I'm okay with an Amik Robertson or something like that. But
I wouldn't mind him in round 2 for the Lions.
I don't think he's going to make it to 50, but if he did, I know they have maybe other greater needs, but I think he would be a perfect fit for the team. But I can't, I'd be too much of a homer to go him here, but I am between a corner and a safety here. And, I'm going to go McNeil Warren at safety. I think they need help on the back end, and you could say I was kind of thinking maybe like a Chris Johnson here, but and then Pons is in the mix for me, but McNeil Warren kind of solves, I think, could help solve some of the problems on the back end for them.
Yeah, and I personally am a big fan of McNeil Warren. He's got the rangy, big body. Like 6'3", 220 play weight. I know he had a little bit different weight at the combine, but I think he fits the 49ers defense perfectly and kind of perfectly replaces Talanoa Hufanga, who they just lost to the Broncos. So very similar player there. With that, I'm on the clock with the Texans. And obviously they have needs, right? It's mostly offensive line. But at this point in the draft, I don't know if I'm really willing to take Besantis in the first round. And I also think there are some interior guys you could get later, like a Jake Slaughter or Keelan Rutledge, that will be good enough players that you'll be happy with them in the second round. With that being said, I think the Houston Texans, their strength is obviously their defensive line, right? So let's just make that stronger. Why not? Why not make it absolutely impossible? Exactly. Like, you want to have the best defensive line in the NFL. And I'm going to go with Caden McDonald simply because they need a nose. And I think he fits perfectly for them. No, he's not a pass rusher, but that's not what they need. They have two really, really good pass rushers in Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. and Caden McDonald in the middle of that defense. Good luck. Yeah. It's very similar to the Bucks pick earlier, I think, in just making a need.
Exactly.
Or I'm sorry,
I'm a big fan of like, you already have a good unit, add to it, kind of just like the Chargers adding a guard for me. Just add to it and just go dominate.
Yeah, for sure. With that, the Chiefs are back on the clock, and that is you, Ryan.
Yeah, so I was curious how this was going to play out, because in trying to kind of game plan with a team that had 2 picks, obviously you got to take who you think is going to be best in that first slot. So I ended up going with corner and filling that need. I think, man, the one thing I've always struggled with, I know they need some defensive help. The thing I've always struggled with Kansas City, and I mean, I know people are kind of souring on Mahomes because he's crossing into the GOAT discussion, and he's a very good player. So even if he's kind of inherently likable, people are kind of getting tired of him. But he doesn't always seem to have a lot of help. He never complains about it, but they don't always have, since Hill left, they haven't had a lot there. So I think I'm going to go and get the best receiver on the board here for them, and go Concepcion there, and solidify that position for him when he returns.
Yeah, and I really like the pick. Totally understand it as well. With everything going on with their other wide receiver, Rashee Rice, they don't really have many weapons outside of him. And obviously they drafted a first-round receiver a few years ago, but that doesn't seem to have panned out that well. Kelsey's definitely is on his way out. So getting Mahomes another option makes a ton of sense. And with that, I am on the clock with the Dolphins. And, I feel like the Dolphins just have so many needs. Like I said before, they have one of the worst
They need everything.
rosters in the NFL. Period. Like it's insane how many. Like genuinely, I could take another corner here and probably feel okay about it. That's how bad their roster is all the way from top to bottom. With that being said, though, um, I really want to go receiver here, and I want to go with Denzel Boston. But I'm thinking ahead, and I'm thinking, okay, next year's receiver class is really, really good, right? We all know that. There's not really an edge here that I love for Miami, and they kind of just need everything. So I do think I'm leaning Denzel Boston here. I like Peter Woods and I like Terrell, but Terrell, obviously, we already picked corner. Peter Woods, I'm a iffy on. And I think Denzel Boston. I think I am higher on Denzel Boston than a lot of people. Um, a lot of people seem
I
to
think
think
you want
he's
Peter
not
Woods
that
here.
good, but you think so? I
I
mean,
plan to take him at 31 with the Patriots
Yeah,
with the next
that's what
pick.
I figured.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, you do
That
you,
makes
but
sense
that's who
because I'm like,
I was sitting here for the last 5 picks, like that's my guy, like whatever. But
yeah, yeah, and
that's how the
I
draft
love
works.
Boston. He is right.
He's good.
He reminds me of Justin Jefferson in some ways. Not like, I just think he kind of moves similar to him and the play style is similar. Obviously I don't think he's as good and they're a little different body size. Denzel Boston's like 6'3", 6'4". I just really think Denzel Boston is underrated. Like, call me crazy. I like him better than Casey Concepcion and probably even better than Omar Cooper Jr. at this point. But that's just me. With that, James, you're up with the Pats.
Okay, well, audible. Um, let's see, Pat.
Do
Ty
we have
Simpson.
to?
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we have to fill for you, James, while you think about it? We haven't had a long
It's
pick.
kind of funny to me too because there's some guys still on the board that I actually really really like, but the Pats don't need them. The
Hmm.
Pats don't need a corner, and I think it's almost criminal that Tyrell's still on the board. But like they
You can
have
leave. You
great
can leave him
corners.
there if you want. He might not make it to out of the first round if you do it.
Like a part of me, just because we're doing what we would do, I'm like, he's just such a talent. Pairing him with Gonzalez would be insane. But they have a solid number 2 corner with Davis, and like they don't need a corner. So, and then there's a couple
I
good
think this would be the perfect time for a team to trade up for Ty Simpson. I think
that
the
would make perfect
Patriots would
sense.
love to trade down here. So
Yeah, and like their D line is strength is in the middle. So like Peter Woods wouldn't be too big of an option. Banks, I love Banks as a player, but like once again for New England, not exactly what they need. They need a wide receiver, but now, especially after the last run, we are looking, at least in terms of like the top talent, pretty thin. I know it's a fairly good class, but I'm not taking Chris Brazzell from Tennessee or anything like that here. So I'm going to have to. I know we mentioned a little bit that he's up and down, but they could, as any team could always use another pass rusher. So I'm gonna go with Cassius Howell here, just because, like I mentioned, their strength on their D line is in the interior. Let's put someone on the outside, and pressuring the quarterback's never really a bad option.
yeah, and while I don't hate the pick, we already talked about how I feel about the player a little bit
Yeah,
earlier, so I don't need to go into that. I would have went Max and Ihanatur here, because they need a right tackle. Morgan Moses is definitely on his way out. The Patriots, offensive line had a lot of issues in the Super Bowl specifically last year, but all the way through the playoffs too. And does he start week one? Probably not, and you don't really want him to. But if he hits, man, that is going to be a great pick in the back of the first round. But I do understand going edge here because that is a big need for them, and he'll
yeah.
play right away.
I'm
So,
not as big on him as some are.
which is understandable. He's more of like a athletic traits kind of guy more than what you see on film right now today. So I definitely understand your take there. With that being said, Seattle is on the clock, and Ryan, you are up for our last pick of the mock draft.
Yeah, I mean, if you were, because wait, I asked you guys before, because this would be chaos if we could do trades anyways, it would take forever, and it's a good decision not to do trades. But you were talking about trading up for Ty Simpson. I could see this being a place where Seattle says, "Hey, we're in play because you want to leave it." There might be teams that want to get to the bottom end of the first round versus trying to compete for that first pick with the break, because if you make it from the last pick of the first round to the first pick of the second, that means when you're on the clock in the second, there's a lot of calls going into that first team for that first pick in the second. So I could see somebody trying to sneak up and get Simpson here because there's still a couple good players on the board. Obviously, we're not doing trades, but
I'll say not only that, but just a quick add to that. If you wanted to take Simpson here at 32 instead of 33, you get that fifth-year option on him for cheap if he pans out.
Exactly. That was in the back of my mind too. So I could see that happening. I'm just saying that as kind of a qualifier, but obviously I'm going to make the pick, because the other thing that I could see with Seattle trading back is they need a running back. That's one of their biggest needs with losing Walker, and there's not really one that's quite in the market. So I could see them wanting to trade back. But all that as a lengthy preamble, I think I'm going to go with. I mean, man, he slipped further than we thought. I think I'm going to go with Terrell here. They need, they need defensive backfield help. I had corner and safety identified. I kind of cannibalized the safety ranks myself because I took McNeil, Warren, and Downs. And if you would have given me a chance, I probably would have taken Thieneman at some point too. So. I like Keontae Scott. I like what's coming down the pike with some of the corners, but yeah, him sitting there, I feel like that gets a running mate for Witherspoon there.
Not Pons?
I wanted to go Pons. I really did. But if you had taken Terrell and taken him off the board, then I probably would have maybe gone Pons next. You could have said Chris Johnson. There's some other people in the mix. But Pons, especially with what Seattle has shown they're interested in too, they kind of faded on Tariq Woolen a little bit. I know there were some maybe effort inconsistencies and all of that, but if they like Witherspoon, I gotta think they're gonna like Pons. That's kind of right up their alley. But yeah, Terrell's a good player. So
yeah, I like Terrell better. I just had to poke the Indiana.
No, I'm glad you did. I mean, believe me, Cooper, Pons. I mean, we're only doing first round, but if you gave us the whole draft, I'd probably get Coogan and Fisher off the board faster than they would traditionally.
I like Coogan very much for a like a 4th, 5th round pick.
I do think that some of the Indiana guys are a little bit undervalued. Like I don't think Coogan is going to go as low. I've seen 6th round projections on him. I'm not really buying that.
Like I said, I would take him in the 4th. No problem.
Yeah, Fisher too. I think he's a pretty low rated linebacker that I think will be a little bit on the rise. But I don't mean to make this an IU thing. We finally got our first round completed here.
Well, and to make it an IU thing for a second, kind of piggybacking off of you, I do feel like I completely agree. There's a lot of Indiana guys that are undervalued and underrated, like, Surratt, both the running backs, Hemby and Black, I feel like could do something in the NFL. So it'll be kind of fun to see where those guys fall. But back to a point you made earlier, actually, I do hope to do a 3-round mock draft with trades on the show, which I know when I say that, I'm sure you guys are thinking, oh my God, that would take 6 hours. That would be
that's
insane
exactly
and
what went through my
possible.
head.
However, what I would do is spread it over multiple days. So we would do like first round one day, second round the next day, third round the next day, and it would kind of be similar to this. Obviously, it would be a little bit longer for each round because we're making trades and everything, but I personally love doing that exercise. I try to do it every year on Twitter, where I get like 25 people together or 20 people, and then we all have a team or two, and we can all make trades, and usually that's 7 rounds, so that one gets really, really crazy. But that is something I would like to do, and it definitely would sound like it would be fun. With that, though, the first round is in the books, boys. How are we feeling?
I mean, the Lions got my favorite left tackle, so I'm good.
You didn't even have the Lions. That was
that's fine. That's who I want.
Yeah. But But no, yeah, I think it went pretty well. I mean, I think we had enough kind of swerves to kind of simulate what what may happen. I'm looking at some of the grades here. That Bain grade is brutal. I'm with
Yeah.
you on that Bain pick. I think that's a brutal grade for that pick. I'm not a fan of that grade. I'm a fan of the pick. I'm not a fan of the grade.
Yeah. I also don't understand why he's a 3 technique on this.
Yeah.
I don't get that, but he's more of a 5 tech and on. Like I've said it many times on Twitter. I see him as more like a 3-4 hybrid defensive end, and a lot of people have attacked me going, he's not 320 pounds. What are you thinking? And I'm like, well, he's not going to be a 3 tech. He's going to be a 5 to a 7 probably, because 7 is outside shoulder of the tackle. I would prefer him inside shoulder of the tackle though, if we can help it. So
He's got a good amount of power. I mean, you can look at his stats all you want, his size, but he's got a lot of power. That was the other thing I was gonna piggyback off of with the IU thing. Is I did go to the college football playoff final. I was watching obviously both teams, and it's amazing to me that the two teams that played the longest still have some undervalued players in my opinion. Bain obviously is properly valued, kind of like Mendoza. Massador has gone up since I kind of initially saw him as kind of undervalued. He's shot up a little bit, but you got Keontae Scott that you could kind of put in the same category as Pons to me on the Miami side. You've got Daniels that I could see as kind of like a Surratt. You talked about him. It's funny because usually it's the teams that get the most tape. Like, oh, okay, we saw these teams a lot. Oh, they were the last 2 teams that we had to watch, but their players just, even though they played well, Pons played well. All these players that we're talking about all played super well through that playoff run. But they're still a little bit undervalued come draft time, it seems.
Which is kind of funny because, I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but we had 4 players in the first round from Clemson.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, 3 or 4. And it's like they sucked. So I don't know what happened there. But it seems like for some reason the best teams in college football are underrated coming into the draft this year. So definitely an odd situation there. With that said, though, I think that's all we got today. Unless there's anything else you guys want to add before we get out of here.
No, they hit my Pregnon pick, but I understand that's a more unconventional.
Well, it is what it is. I feel like.
I stand by it, but I just understand why they hate it.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it also makes sense why someone wouldn't like it at the same time. So, with that though, a lot of fun, of course. Ryan, thank you for joining us as always. Let people know where they can find you.
Sports Intel Ryan on X. Jace tagged me on there, and you can listen to me on the radio. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh, 7 to 9 on Jethro FM here locally and on the internet. And we also convert it to a podcast, and then we have a football only show, Shane Graham's Extra Points, on Thursday nights, 7 to 9, and you'll see both of these guys on here. James was on recently, and I'm getting ready to contact Jace. He doesn't know that yet, but about coming on the show soon here.
Well, as we get to draft time, it's going to be the perfect time to conversate on all of our shows because, as we get closer, there's going to be a lot more to talk about. So I will definitely be looking forward to that. And as always, thank you for joining us. Thank you guys for watching. You can find me at JSoSweet, James at Gullet_James, and both of us at MIFB Network. Before we get out of here, links are in the description for both Stick to the Model, use our code MFN2026 to save at checkout, and our Fanatics code, or our Fanatics link is in the bio as well, or the description as well, I should say, which if you're looking for some sports apparel, that is the place to get it. With that said, once again, we appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll